So Napoleon Hill is, he's basically the undisputed godfather of hustle culture.
Oh, absolutely, without a doubt.
Right. Like, you look at his legacy, and he's the guy who wrote the ultimate original Bible on getting rich. He was the one rubbing elbows with Andrew Carnegie, Henry Ford, Thomas Edison.
Yeah, he was the architect of the 20th century American dream, for better or worse. I mean, he built a philosophy entirely around acquisition.
Exactly. He was a man who publicly admitted that, in his early days anyway, he felt he absolutely had to drive a Rolls-Royce. He bought this massive, sprawling estate in New York.
Right. He equated success entirely 100% with opulence and visible wealth.
Yes. And then, well, he lost it all.
He really did. The Great Depression hit, and it just wiped him out.
Completely wiped him out. He lost the New York estate. He lost the cars, the possessions. I mean, he went through decades of these incredible, dizzying highs and absolutely devastating wipeout lows.
Which is, what makes him so fascinating.
It does. And here's where it gets really interesting for us today. When he finally wrote the source material we're diving into today, which is a book called Grow Rich, with peace of mind, he was 84 years old.
It is a remarkable pivot. I mean, at 84, he had attained global fame, lost his fortune, rebuilt his life from scratch, and fundamentally realized that his earlier philosophy was, well, dangerously incomplete.
Right.
He explicitly says in the preface of this book that he's trying to help the reader avoid the devastating mistakes he made. Because he realized that accumulating wealth without peace of mind is essentially just a gilded trap.
A golden trap. You're rich, but you're just miserable.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the mission of today's deep dive. We are tailoring this conversation specifically for you, the listener, who is just starting out on your career journey.
Yeah, this is for the beginners.
Right. Maybe you're fresh out of college, staring down your first real job, or maybe you are in your late 20s pivoting to a brand new industry, and you are feeling that intense pressure to perform.
That anxiety of being at the starting line.
Exactly. You are at the starting line. And normally, when you aren't at the starting line, you want a map. You want someone to just say, hey, do these 3 exact things, get this promotion, and you will be successful.
But the reality of a career landscape is incredibly murky. I mean, the path is never linear.
No.
So instead of a map, Hill is offering a compass. For someone just starting their career, this is like getting the ultimate cheat code from a player who played the game all the way to the end, lost his avatar, and then figured out how the game is actually won.
I love that analogy.
Right. We are going to explore how you achieve career success without sacrificing your sanity.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if we want to build this sustainable career and we want to do it without losing our minds, Hill says we cannot start with our resumes.
Nope, not at all.
We cannot start with our LinkedIn profiles or like our networking strategies. We have to start at the absolute bedrock foundation, which is the human mind. Specifically, what he calls building a success-conscious mind.
It is the perfect place to begin because Hill posits that human perception operates with what he calls a yes-no valve.
A yes-no valve.
Yeah. Now, this is a very simple, almost mechanical way to look at human psychology, but it is deeply profound. When a circumstance presents itself in your career, like an unexpected project, a sudden reorganization, maybe a new boss, your brain processes that event through this central focal point.
Right.
If you have a positive mental attitude, what he terms a success-conscious mind, your valve is set to kniff it. You instinctively look for the opportunity, the lesson, the hidden advantage.
And if you have a negative mental attitude, the valve just snaps to no.
Exactly.
You see the obstacle, you see the risk, you see all the perfectly logical reasons why something is going to fail.
Right. The no valve is protective, but it's completely paralyzing. And Hill argues that to operate as a success-conscious individual, you have to operate with a definite chief aim.
You have to know exactly where you're going.
Yes. When you have that aim, your yes valve stays open, and critically, you become immune to the negative opinions of others.
And he grounds this idea with the story of Thomas Edison.
Oh, this is such a good story.
It really is. We all know Edison as the titan of invention, right? The guy holding the light bulb. But the source text points out that Edison was actually thrown out of school in the early grades.
Thrown out.
Yeah, his teacher decided that young Thomas had an addled mind. The teacher literally told the family that the boy was incapable of taking schooling.
I want us to really pause and imagine the psychological weight of that. In that era, the school teacher was the absolute, unquestioned voice of authority in a community.
Oh, yeah. The ultimate authority.
When that authority figure looks at a young child and says, "You do not have what it takes, your brain is fundamentally defective," the natural, almost universal response for anyone would be to let that no valve snap shut permanently.
Right. You would internalize that assessment completely. You'd say, well, the expert says I'm addled, so I guess I am broken. I guess I'll just go sweep floors. But Edison didn't. He chose to take possession of his own mind. He chose to live his own life.
Which is incredible.
It is. I mean, he had zero formal scientific training, but he directed his mind toward the incandescent lamp anyway. He actively overrode the teacher's external no with his own internal.
Yes. And we see an even more dramatic, visceral example of this mental shift later in the source material. Hill tells a story about a young man who came to see him shortly after World War II.
Oh, the Fuller Brush guy.
Yes. So this guy was a veteran. He had been a cook in the Army. And before the war, he was a failed salesman for the Fuller Brush Company. He shows up at Hill's door completely destitute.
Just rock bottom.
Absolutely. His clothes are shabby. He literally has a single nickel in his pocket, and he is physically swaying from hunger.
So this guy shows up swaying from hunger, and all he wants from Hill is a meal ticket. He just wants a place to sleep and enough food to get to the next day.
Right. His entire existence is focused on mere survival.
But Hill doesn't just hand him a $20 bill. He looks at this starving guy and asks this completely unhinged question. He says, why settle for a meal ticket? How would you like to become a millionaire?
Which is wild. The young man thought Hill was mocking his misery.
I would too.
Right. He begs Hill not to joke with him, but Hill was entirely serious. Hill forced the young man to sit down and take a psychological inventory of his assets right then and there.
And the guy says, I have a nickel.
Yeah, and Hill says, no, your mind is your primary asset. Let's look at your experiences. They drilled down. He was a good cook in the Army. He had some sales experience, even if he wasn't great at it.
Okay, so he's combining these skills.
Exactly. Hill's own success-conscious mind, which was permanently set to get, yes, instantly saw a combination. This was right when new, advanced types of aluminum cookware were hitting the consumer market.
Ah, I see where this is going.
Hill suggested the young man organize home-cooked dinner parties for housewives using this new cookware and then sell them the matched sets right after they ate the meal.
It's brilliant. It's basically the Tupperware party model, but he's applying it to aluminum cookware.
Exactly. But the young man's immediate response was just a machine gun barrage of no's.
Naturally.
He's like, where will I sleep tonight? How can I sell cookware when I don't even own a suit? What bank is going to give me the credit to buy the initial inventory?
Which is the completely natural reaction of a mind that is just drowning in a no state. He is summing up the obstacles instead of looking at the mechanics of the goal.
But Hill just sat there. He waited until he literally saw the young man's mental valve flip.
Wow.
He waited until the young man stopped arguing and actually believed he could execute the plan. Once that cognitive shift happened, once the valve flipped to Inway, yes, Hill gave him a room.
He let him use his personal charge account to buy a suit, right?
Yes, and guaranteed his first small loan for the cookware.
And the result is staggering. Within 4 years, this guy who was swaying from hunger and begging for a meal ticket had built a massive national sales force and was personally worth over $4 million.
What's fascinating here is why this mental shift matters so deeply, especially for someone listening to this who is navigating the anxiety of a new career.
Yeah, why does it actually work?
Because this is not about magical thinking. This isn't some pseudo-spiritual manifesting where you just wish for $1 million and it appears. It is about cognitive focus and biological efficiency.
Biological efficiency.
Think about it in terms of caloric energy. The human brain consumes roughly 20% of the body's energy.
Okay.
When you are operating in a known state, when you're anxious, when you are dealing with imposter syndrome, when you are constantly worrying about whether your boss likes you or what your peers are doing.
Which is exhausting.
It is.
Yeah.
Your brain is burning massive amounts of energy, processing thousands of disparate negative data points. But when you know exactly where you are going, when you have that definite chief aim, your brain becomes an incredibly efficient filtering machine.
Oh, I see. It stops wasting caloric energy on fears and distractions.
Exactly. Your mental power is suddenly laser focused on finding the yes in every single room you walk into.
So if I am listening to this and I'm sitting at my desk at an entry-level job, or, I'm sending out my 50th resume into the absolute void of online job portals.
A painful place to be.
Very painful. How do I actually build this success-conscious mind? Because saying just flip the valve to yes sounds easy, but doing it is hard.
It is hard.
Thankfully, Hill gives us a very specific, optionable framework to do this. He calls it autosuggestion.
And he breaks autosuggestion down into 6 distinct steps. And I really want to analyze why these steps work rather than just listing them.
Okay, let's walk through the mechanism. Step 1 is to find a quiet spot where you can be completely undisturbed.
Crucial for focus.
Step 2 is to write down your specific goal. And Hill is adamant that this cannot be vague. You cannot write, I want a good career or I want to be rich.
Right, it needs to be a highly specific salary figure or a specific job title. And crucially, you have to write down exactly what you intend to give in return for that money or that title.
That last part is so vital. It grounds the exercise in reality.
It does. The marketplace does not just hand you things because you want them. It is a strict exchange of value. But let's look at the psychology of writing it down.
Yeah, why writing?
When you physically write a specific goal, you are engaging your reticular activating system, which is the part of your brain that dictates what you pay attention to.
Right.
By forcing vague desires into specific written words, you are telling your brain this is the only data that matters now.
That makes total sense.
Mm.
Then step 3 is to memorize that written statement. Step 4 is to read it aloud to yourself twice daily, actively listening to your own words.
Right.
Step 5 involves putting the mastermind principle to work, which we are going to dive deeply into later. And step 6 is act immediately when a plan appears. Do not hesitate.
Steps 3 and 4 are where the actual reprogramming happens. The underlying mechanism here is repetition. You are systematically forcing a new set of instructions into your subconscious mind.
But I have to push back here.
Go for it.
Let's go back to that yes-no valve. If my mental programming is set to default, no, if I have a lifetime of anxiety acting like a heavy-duty corporate firewall blocking all incoming career optimism,
Sure.
how do I actually override that system?
Yeah.
When you are naturally doubtful or
Yeah.
when you are clinically stressed, just reading a piece of paper twice a day feels incredibly flimsy. It feels like throwing pebbles at a brick wall.
That is a very real friction point. But Hill views autosuggestion precisely as the software patch for that firewall.
A software patch.
Yes. You have to remember, you aren't just reading words. You are engaging in a process of self-persuasion. Yes, the conscious mind might reject it at first. The firewall might block it. You might feel silly doing it.
You definitely feel silly doing it at first.
But the subconscious mind, which actually drives 90% of our behavior, is highly receptive to repetition and emotion rather than pure logic.
Interesting.
By repeating the goal daily, especially right before sleep or right after waking when the brain is transitioning through alpha and theta wave states, you are bypassing the conscious firewall.
Oh, wow. So you are rewriting the root code.
Exactly. Over time, the subconscious stops fighting the conscious goal and starts directing your awareness to the opportunities that match the programming.
Okay, so we are patching the software. We are actively programming the mind for success. And I can see how that is relatively easy to maintain when things are going well.
Sure, when you're winning, it's easy.
Right. When you get the second interview, when your manager praises your pitch deck, the yes valve feels natural. But autosuggestion requires a clear mental field to work.
It does.
What happens when that field is littered with past failures? Because anyone starting a career is going to hit a massive roadblock.
Oh, inevitably.
You will get fired. You will botch a presentation so badly the room goes silent, you get passed over for the promotion you deserved. How does the yes valve hold up when reality punches you in the mouth?
This brings us to one of Hill's most uncompromising, brutal rules. It is the core of how you survive the long game of a career. Hill states that you absolutely must close the door on the past.
He actually has a mantra for this, right? Which he tells the reader to write on a card and carry in their pocket at all times.
Yes.
The quote is, "Every adversity has within it the seed of an equivalent or a greater benefit." He insists that to maintain a success-conscious mind, you have to completely close the door on past regrets, bitterness, and grudges.
It all comes back to cognitive load.
How so?
If you are carrying the heavy baggage of a past failure, your brain literally does not have the processing power or the bandwidth to conceive of future achievements. You are spending all your caloric energy relitigating a past you cannot change.
And he illustrates this with a really relatable, grounded story from his childhood.
The horse story.
Yes. So when Hill was a kid, he spent 25 cents on a raffle ticket. And against all odds, he won a $5 horse.
For a kid back then, this was an incredible asset.
Huge. He was thrilled. He puts the horse in the stable, and he feeds it an absolute mountain of oats and corn to celebrate. But that night, the horse breaks out of the stall, drinks too much water on top of the dry grain, founders, and dies.
A total disaster for a kid.
Exactly. Not only is the horse dead, but it costs Hill another $5, which is money he did not really have, just to pay a neighbor to haul the carcass away and bury it.
Ouch.
But what was the hidden benefit? Where was the seed of greater advantage? Hill says he was so deeply burned by that experience that he was permanently, fundamentally cured of the desire to gamble.
Wow.
He never risked his money on a game of chance again for the rest of his life. That painful early loss of a few dollars saved him countless thousands of dollars later in life.
And while that is a great childhood lesson, the source material shares a much darker, much higher stakes setback from Hill's adult career.
Oh, right. This one is intense.
It's a story about how closing the door on the past literally saves your life's work. Hill had spent years writing a massive draft of his philosophy. He had partnered with a powerful newspaper publisher named Don Mellett. They were days away from signing a life-changing contract with Judge Elbert Gary, who was the chairman of U.S. Steel. Judge Gary wasn't just going to publish the book. He was going to finance it and mandate that every single key employee in his massive corporate empire read it.
So Hill was on the precipice of unimaginable wealth and influence.
And then the bottom completely falls out.
Literally.
Don Mellett, his business partner, was using his newspaper to expose corrupt ties between the local police force and the organized mob.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. 3 days before the final U.S. Steel meeting, gangsters assassinated Mellett.
That is just terrifying.
Because Hill was his highly visible business partner, the mob naturally assumed Hill was also involved in the expose. Hill was tipped off that he was next.
He had to flee.
He had to flee his home in the middle of the night and hide in absolute terror for a year. And during that year in hiding, Judge Gary passed away.
Oh, man.
The U.S. Steel deal evaporated instantly. Hill went from almost being a multimillionaire to being completely broke, hiding in a rural cabin, terrified for his life.
It is genuinely hard to imagine a worse career setback than my business partner was murdered by the mob, and now I am a fugitive.
It really is.
I mean, if we apply the mantra to that, where on earth is the seed of equivalent benefit in that level of trauma?
It took him a long time, but Hill found it. Years later, looking back, he realized that if the U.S. Steel deal had actually gone through, he would have been forever branded as a tool of big business.
Oh, interesting.
His philosophy of success would have been viewed with deep, insurmountable suspicion by the general public. They would have said, well, of course this works for the executives at U.S. Steel, but it's not for the working man.
Right. He would have completely lost his independent voice.
Exactly. The failure of that deal, which felt like a literal tragedy at the time, actually preserved his integrity. It allowed his work to eventually reach millions globally on its own merits rather than as corporate propaganda.
That is a profound reframe. And we see this exact same principle applied in a more traditional business sense with the story of Arthur DiCiccio. DiCiccio is in his 20s. His father hands him the keys to a completely failed family business that manufactured mobile homes.
Okay.
The business was dead in the water. Most people would have just liquidated the assets, paid whatever debts they could, and walked away. The no valve would have snapped shut.
Naturally.
But DiCiccio refused to carry the failure label into his own thinking. He looked at the wreckage of the business and asked, how can I do this differently? He studied outside industries.
Right. He looked at General Motors.
Yes. He applied General Motors' mass production and annual model change methods to mobile homes. He introduced competing product lines. Within 4 years, he turned a dead, failed business into a $5 million empire.
Because DiCiccio refused to be dragged down by what Hill so brilliantly calls the mournful clank of looking backward.
The mournful clank. It's such a vivid, haunting phrase.
It's visceral. This is perhaps the most critical psychological danger for someone early in their career. I want you to imagine literally dragging heavy, rusting iron chains into your new office on your first day of work.
Wow. Okay.
Every time you move, everyone hears it. If you drag a past failure into a new job, let's say you are nursing a deep, burning grudge against a former manager who treated you unfairly.
Right.
Or you are deeply insecure because you were laid off. You are radiating negative qualities. You may not say a single word about your past to your new coworkers.
But they could feel it.
But your posture, your tone, your hesitations in meetings, your defensiveness when given feedback, they all signal caution. Future employers and colleagues subconsciously detect that bitterness, It acts as a professional repellent.
Let's translate this to the modern listener. It is incredibly hard to close the door on a layoff today when your LinkedIn feed is a constant scrolling reminder of your former colleague's success or, a glaring reminder of your own unemployment.
Oh, LinkedIn can be brutal for that.
It really can.
Yep.
If you completely bomb an interview for your dream job, or you get caught in a massive corporate reduction in force, how do you handle it?
Hill is saying you have to view it as a tempering process, like steel being forged in a fire.
You have to consciously train yourself to speak exclusively in the future tense.
Yes. The failure is not you. The failure is just a data point, an event that happened.
Precisely. You must systematically sever the emotional attachment to the event.
Yeah.
But I want to really push back on this because it sounds borderline dangerous.
Okay. How so?
It sounds like you are treating your career like a snake shedding its skin. You just slip out the old disaster, leave the skin in the grass, and slither away shiny and new.
Right.
Isn't there a massive risk of toxic positivity here? If we just say, everything is great, I have closed the door on my past mistakes, aren't we just ignoring our flaws entirely? How do you actually grow as a professional if you just slam the door on every screw-up?
That is the critical distinction we have to make, and Hill is very clear about it. Hill does not advocate ignoring the lessons of the past. He advocates ignoring the emotional baggage. He urges us to act as practical philosophers in our careers. When the disaster happens, the philosopher looks at the wreckage, searches ruthlessly for the root cause, extracts the specific actionable lesson, and then uses that lesson to armor themselves for the future.
Ah, I see.
You keep the data, you delete the trauma.
You keep the data, you delete the trauma. I love that.
Yes. If you bombed the presentation because you didn't prepare the financial slides, you take that data. I must master the financials before I speak.
Yeah.
Once you have extracted that data, you firmly, irrevocably shut the door on the guilt, the shame, and the resentment. You don't sit around feeling stupid. You just learn Excel.
You just learn Excel. That's perfect. But keeping that door shut, maintaining that forward-looking, success-conscious focus requires a massive amount of ongoing energy.
It does.
It requires active, deliberate, daily maintenance of your mental state, which leads us to explore how we actually maintain this dynamic peace of mind day in and day out.
And this is where Hill's perspective as an 84-year-old man really shines through. He has seen the burnout. He clarifies that peace of mind is not just resting in a hammock on a beach.
Right.
It is a restful base upon which your life dynamism stands. Think of it as the eye of the hurricane. The storm of your career, the deadlines, the office politics, the market shifts is swirling violently around you.
But your core is calm.
Exactly. Your core remains perfectly calm, which allows you to make sharp, effective, unclouded decisions. And he details highly specific daily routines to construct this eye of the hurricane.
My absolute favorite part of the source material is the analogy he uses here to describe how we should protect our minds. He tells us to imagine our mind as a medieval castle.
It is such a brilliant spatial way to think about mental boundaries. Walk us through the architecture of this mental castle.
Okay, picture a classic medieval castle. The outer wall is your first line of defense. Now, this wall isn't super high. It is relatively permeable. Anyone with a legitimate excuse or a basic piece of daily business can cross this wall. This represents your everyday interactions, answering Slack messages, talking to the barista, dealing with the general unavoidable noise of the day.
Right, you can't block the world out completely, or you can't function.
Exactly. But then you go deeper into the courtyard and you hit the second wall. This wall is much higher, much thicker. Your mind only lowers the drawbridge here for people who have something strongly in common with you or who have something mutually beneficial to share.
So no energy vampires.
No energy vampires.
Yeah.
You do not let the workplace gossip, the constant complainer, or the office pessimist pass this wall. You guard this space based on shared purpose.
It requires a toll of positivity to enter.
Yes. And then at the very center of the castle is the inner keep, the high tower. This is absolutely impenetrable. It is a quiet, sacred retreat where only you, and if you are spiritual, your concept of the creator can enter.
Nobody else gets in.
Nobody. Not your boss, not your spouse, not your closest friend. Hill says you have to retreat to this inner keep regularly to recharge your spirit and solve complex problems entirely free from the contamination of outside interference.
And to actively guard these walls, Hill uses another fascinating psychological tool. He personifies his mental defenses. He literally visualizes actual princes of guidance standing guard at the gates.
I'll admit, when I first read that, it sounded like fantasy literature, like he's playing Dungeons and Dragons in his head.
It sounds eccentric, absolutely. But if we break it down, it is a highly effective early form of what we now call a cognitive behavioral technique.
Oh, okay. Explain that.
He imagines the Prince of Peace of Mind guarding the outer door, turning away anyone trying to bring in unnecessary drama or stress. He visualizes the Prince of Hope, the Prince of Love, the Prince of Sound Physical Health.
Right.
And here is the daily habit. He actively, verbally expresses gratitude to these princes every single day.
But let me ask you to explain this simply. Let's use the Feynman technique here.
Yeah.
Why personify them?
Like, why not just wake up and say, I'm going to focus on being healthy today? Why invent a prince?
Because personification creates psychological distance and emotional resonance. Let's say you wake up and you feel a physical ache or you feel a sudden spike of anxiety about a meeting.
Yeah.
If you just say, I am anxious, you identify with the emotion. You become the anxiety.
Right.
But by giving your defense mechanism a name and a face, like a guard at a door, you externalize the problem. You mentally assign the Prince of Sound Physical Health to investigate and protect your body.
Oh, I love that.
It stops being I am broken and becomes the guard is dealing with the threat. It is a structured, imaginative way of delegating anxiety away from your conscious mind, keeping you alert to your own inward powers.
That makes total sense. You are outsourcing the worry to your own mental architecture. But managing your mental state inside the castle requires fiercely managing your time outside of it.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the most practical, actionable career step in this entire philosophy, the time budget.
The time budget. Hill outlines the ideal, uncompromising 24-hour day. 8 hours for sleep, 8 hours for work. And this is the crucial non-negotiable part, 8 hours of free time.
And we must define free time exactly as Hill meant it. He stresses that this time must be spent doing what you want to do, not what you have to do.
Right.
It is not time for catching up on work emails on your phone. It is not time for running stressful errands. It is not for grinding away at a side hustle that you secretly hate just to make extra money.
Yep.
It is specifically for play, playing ball with your dog, reading fiction, playing an instrument, or literally just sitting and watching the clouds move.
Okay, I can literally hear the listeners laughing from here. Because we have to reconcile this with the reality of the 2020s corporate landscape.
It's a tough sell today.
It is. What does this mean for the listener who feels like their entry-level job demands 12 to 14 hours a day? If you are a junior analyst at a major bank, or a first-year associate at a law firm, or you are trying to survive at a tech startup, an 8-hour workday sounds like a half day.
Right.
You log off at 5 p.m., and your boss thinks you've quit. How do you possibly reconcile Hill's 888 budget with modern hustle expectations?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Hill is warning you about a fundamental existential trap in career building. If you surrender your free time to your employer, you destroy the very ego and self-possession required to ever advance beyond the entry level.
You become a drone. You become what he calls a slave to the clock.
You lose your individuality. You just become a cog.
Exactly.
Precisely. Think about where brilliant ideas come from. The free time, the play, the relaxation, the hobbies. That is what feeds your subconscious mind.
Right. That's where the connections happen.
That is where your intuition synthesizes all the data you gather during the day. Guarding those 8 hours of personal time is exactly what gives you the creative energy, the unique perspective, and the sheer intellectual vitality to stand out and be brilliant during the 8 hours you do work.
That makes a lot of sense.
If you work 14 hours a day, your work inevitably becomes derivative, exhausted, and reactive. You aren't building a career, you are just turning a crank until you burn out.
So protecting your peace of mind and strictly bounding your time is actually the ultimate competitive advantage.
It is the only sustainable competitive advantage.
Okay, let's pivot and address the natural friction of that point. We just talked about fiercely guarding your 8 hours of free time, but the immediate panic for any junior employee is, well, if I clock out at exactly 5 p.m., how do I ever stand out?
Sure.
How do I get promoted if I'm not the one burning the midnight oil?
Hill anticipated that exact panic. His answer isn't working longer hours, it's changing what you do during the 8 hours you are actually there. He calls this the extra mile principle.
The extra mile.
This is Hill's absolute hallmark for the big earner. He defines the extra mile very simply, but its application is profound, giving more and better service than you are paid for.
The source text illustrates this with a seemingly simple story of a dry goods saleswoman.
Oh.
She is working behind a counter in a department store. A customer comes in and asks for a specific item. The standard expected service, what she has paid her hourly wage to do, is to look at the shelf, see it's empty, and say, sorry, we're out.
Right, that's the baseline.
But instead, she goes out of her way, leaves the counter, digs into the dusty depths of the stockroom, and searches until she finds the item for the customer. She does more than she is strictly paid for.
And what is the result? That simple extra effort makes the customer feel uniquely valued. It builds a loyal clientele.
Yeah.
Customers start coming into the store and waiting in line specifically for her, ignoring the other clerks. She becomes indispensable to the store's revenue, and eventually, inevitably, she gets promoted to a buyer.
We also have the story of the young man working for a magazine distributor. He was basically a low-level clerk. His job was just to move paper around. But he noticed that the printing jobs and the promotional brochures they handled were of terrible quality. Now, he wasn't in the art department. It wasn't his job to fix it. He wasn't being paid to care. But he took the brochures home, hired freelance commercial artists and copywriters on spec.
Which means he promised them a cut if his plan worked out.
Exactly, to completely redesign the brochures. He then took the massive risk of bypassing his own internal hierarchy, going directly to the client companies that printed them, and showed them how they could get substantially more for their money.
He fundamentally altered his own value proposition. He refused to remain a clerk and forced the world to treat him as an invaluable business consultant.
Wow.
And the psychology here is vital to understand. The extra mile is not about being a martyr. It is not about letting yourself be exploited by a faceless corporation.
Right, it's not about doing your boss's laundry or picking up their dry cleaning.
No, it is a deeply selfish psychological tool for you. Hill says walking the extra mile acts as a mental tonic.
Tonic.
Yes. It relieves the mind of built-in obstacles, resentments, and the toxic, soul-crushing feeling of being just an employee. By continually aggressively qualifying yourself for the next step upward, you expand your own ego and capabilities. You make yourself too big for the job you're currently in. You force the environment to adapt to your size.
But let's translate that magazine clerk story to a Gen Z worker at a tech startup today. Because this is where the 1950s advice hits modern reality.
Yeah, very true.
If you take proprietary company data home today and you hire a freelancer on Upwork on spec to redesign your boss's slide deck, you do not get promoted. You get fired instantly for violating a non-disclosure agreement. You probably get sued.
You definitely get sued.
So what is the modern equivalent of this extra mile that won't get you escorted out of the building by security?
That is a crucial modern distinction. The mechanism of the extra mile today isn't necessarily about going rogue with company assets. It is about anticipating friction and removing it before you are asked.
Okay, give me an example.
If your boss asks for a data report, the baseline is just pulling the numbers. The extra mile is pulling the numbers, highlighting the 3 most surprising trends, and drafting a 1-paragraph summary of what those trends mean for next quarter's strategy. You are adding analytical value that wasn't requested. You are making your manager's job easier.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Going the extra mile is essentially like investing in your own career equity.
Yeah.
You are building skills, you are building a reputation, and you are building undeniable confidence.
Exactly.
But what if your boss is fundamentally toxic? What if you put in all this extra effort, you do the incredible analysis, you find the stockroom items, and your boss just takes all the credit, presents it to the VP as her own work, and refuses to promote or reward you? Because that happens every single day.
It does, and Hill addresses this fear head-on. He argues that the physical reward, the immediate raise, or the promotion from that specific toxic boss is almost secondary.
Wait, really?
Yeah. If your extra efforts aren't rewarded by your current employer, your positive mind will have built up so much courage, resourcefulness, and undeniable skill that you will simply outgrow the toxic environment.
Oh, I see.
You will have the supreme confidence to leave that job, push the toxic boss firmly into the past, and find a better position. You take the equity with you. The toxic boss can steal the credit for a specific project, but they cannot steal the internal capacity you built within yourself by doing the work.
You take the equity with you. That is incredibly empowering. It shifts the power dynamic completely.
It really does.
But while you take that equity with you, you don't have to build your career completely alone. Which brings us to Hill's ultimate career multiplier, the mastermind group.
This is perhaps Hill's most famous concept, and arguably his most powerful. He defines the mastermind as the harmonious blending of 2 or more minds for a definite purpose.
Okay.
When you do this correctly under the right conditions, it creates a third, invisible force, a power vastly greater than the sum of its individual parts.
And Hill was totally literal about this. He believed that human brains literally broadcast and receive thought vibrations, much like radio waves.
Yes, he
He
did.
thought you could
Yeah.
physically tune your brain to the frequency of another person's brain.
Yes, he leaned heavily into the early 20th century fascination with radio and electromagnetism. But even if we strip away the metaphysical language, the psychological and practical reality is profound. I want to be clear, this is not just networking.
Right.
Networking is inherently transactional. I'll introduce you to my boss if you review my resume, or I'll buy you a coffee if you endorse me on LinkedIn. A mastermind is entirely different.
How so?
It is a structured, intentional, deeply committed alliance designed for mutual spiritual and mental growth. By tuning into other positive minds, you gain direct access to their lifetime of experiences, their unique insights, and their subconscious problem-solving abilities.
So how do we actually build one? Because Hill has very strict rules for this. It's not just grabbing beers with coworkers on a Friday and complaining about management. We need to explain why these rules exist.
The structure is everything. The structure creates the psychological safety required for the group to function.
Okay, rule 1. Invite 2 or 3 harmonious people. Keep it small to start. Why so small?
Because true harmony is fragile. The larger the group, the exponentially higher the chance of discord. You need a tight, unified frequency.
Rule 2. No controversial topics. No politics, no religion. This is strictly about life and career success.
Because politics and religion engage the ego's defense mechanisms. The moment you argue about politics, the walls of your inner castle go up. The mastermind requires the walls to be down.
Rule 3. Everything discussed is strictly confidential.
This is the bedrock. Confidentiality is the only way to lower those inner castle walls. If there is even a fraction of a doubt that someone will gossip about your vulnerabilities or your half-baked business ideas, you will hold back. And a breach of trust destroys the psychological safety required for that third mind to form.
Rule 4. Any new members require a unanimous vote and a trial period.
You must protect the harmony of the group at all costs. One cynical, negative, or overly dominant person can destroy the radio frequency of the entire group. It must be unanimous.
Rule 5. Rotate the chairperson.
This ensures equity. It forces everyone to build speaking poise, to learn how to guide a discussion, and it prevents the group from becoming a cult of personality around one dominant founder.
Rule 6. If this is an internal work group at your company, include both management and rank-and-file employees. Break down the corporate hierarchy.
Because brilliant ideas don't care about your pay grade. The frontline worker sees the friction the manager is blind to. Blending those perspectives creates a holistic view of the problem.
And finally, Rule 7. Adopt a major shared purpose outside of your individual goals. The group needs a project that serves others. And the source material gives a brilliant illustration of this in action, which is the Personal Problem Clinic.
Yes. Hill suggests that a mastermind group could host a regular clinic where they invite people from outside the group to bring in their personal or business problems for the group to solve.
I mean, imagine the sheer networking power of that. Let's say you are a junior executive or an ambitious creative, and you host a clinic where you and your brilliant friends dedicate an hour a week to brainstorming solutions for other people in your community.
The goodwill would be massive.
Staggering. The amount of trust, goodwill, and career capital you would build is just off the charts. You aren't asking for favors. You are positioning yourself as a hub of immense value. You are literally manufacturing serendipity.
Exactly. You become a nexus of solutions.
But I have to ask, I love the radio wave analogy, the blending of minds, the harmony. But isn't there a huge risk of groupthink here?
That's a fair question.
If we are all supposed to be perfectly harmonious and we are voting out anyone who disrupts the vibe, how do you maintain that live your own life individuality we talked about with Thomas Edison at the very beginning? How do you keep from just becoming a homogenized hive mind?
This raises an important question, and it beautifully brings us full circle to the foundation of the philosophy. Hill clarifies that a person who is truly in possession of their own mind, someone who has done the work to build their inner castle,
Right.
who fiercely protects their 8 hours of free time, who knows their definite chief aim through autosuggestion, is in no danger of being overwhelmed by a group. The mastermind only generates that incredible world-bending power when the individuals within it bring their unique, fully realized, self-possessed egos to the table. If you're a blank slate, you just absorb the group's opinions. If you are a fortress, you collaborate as a king.
If you're a blank slate, you absorb the group. If you're a fortress, you collaborate as a king. That is the absolute perfect synthesis of this entire deep dive.
All these tools, the mind, the habits, the extra mile, the group, must be kept in their proper perspective. They support each other.
So let's bring this all together for the listener who is lacing up their shoes at the starting line of their career. To achieve lasting success without losing your soul, you have to start by mechanically flipping your mental valve to inver it.
Yeah, you have to deliberately program your subconscious with a definite chief aim using autosuggestion.
You must slam the door firmly shut on past failures. You leave the heavy emotional baggage behind, but you carry the cold, hard data forward.
You must fiercely guard your personal free time. You must build your mental castle to protect your dynamic peace of mind from the noise of the world.
You must walk the extra mile in your daily tasks, not to please a boss, but to build your own unbreakable, portable career equity.
And you must amplify all of this by blending your self-possessed mind with others in a mastermind group. But as we wrap up this massive journey, we want to leave you with one final, slightly mind-bending thought from the source material.
Yes. In Hill's extensive interviews with Andrew Carnegie, who was at the time one of the richest, most powerful men in human history, Carnegie gave Hill a profound, unexpected warning. He looked at Hill and said, "Don't take yourself too damn seriously unless you wish to be damned by others."
And building on that exact sentiment decades later, at 84 years old, after making millions, losing millions, and finding peace, Hill drops what might be his ultimate mantra for peace of mind.
What is it?
He writes, "Ultimately, nothing matters."
It sounds like pure nihilism at first glance.
It does, but in the context of this entire deeply ambitious philosophy, it is actually the ultimate psychological liberation.
Exactly. It sounds like a paradox after spending all this time talking about how to build career wealth and influence. But realizing that ultimately nothing matters might be the greatest career hack of all.
It really might be.
If that terrifying big presentation or that massive promotion or even a total humiliating public failure ultimately doesn't matter in the grand sweeping scheme of the cosmos, then there is absolutely nothing to fear.
The X-ray machine of your career is broken. The landscape ahead of you is murky and chaotic, but the fear of failure is entirely an illusion.
Yes, you are completely, wonderfully free. You are free to swing for the fences.
Yeah.
You are free to walk into the executive's office with a wild new idea. You are free to live joyfully, guard your time playfully, and build your career entirely on your own terms.
Because if nothing matters ultimately, then the only thing that matters right now is the peace, the joy, and the integrity you bring to your own pursuit of excellence.
What an incredible thought to carry with you. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Grow Rich with peace of mind. Take possession of your mind, protect your inner keep, and go conquer your career journey today. See you next time.